Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Millennium TV Around the World News. This is Famita Islam with you. Before moving on, let's look at this week's top stories. Obama makes new push to expand retirement savings. Obama says we will have a Democratic president succeeding me. Last Myanmar parliament session under current government. Senate panel approves Myanmar nominee. Clinton targets valiant price hikes in campaign appearance. North Korea activity points to possible space launch, says U.S. officials. White House backs Treasury view that Russia's Putin is corrupt. WHO wants to prevent inappropriate trade or travel limits due to Zika. Sanctions talk looms over Paris welcome for Iran's Rouhani. Oregon occupation leader urges end to standoff. Those were the headlines, now the details. U.S. President Barack Obama will propose in his upcoming budget measures to help more than 30 million Americans save for retirement, such as automatically enrolling workers in individual retirement accounts and making it easier for workers to keep savings when they switch jobs, according to the country's Labor Secretary. Labor Secretary Tom Perez unveiled parts of the plan on Monday before heading to California's Silicon Valley to meet with venture capitalists and technology executives about bolstering retirement savings. Obama will present a spending plan Feb 9 to Congress that serves as an outline of political priorities but very rarely comes for fruition. This budget proposed in the final year of Obama's presidency is expected to hit a dead end. President Barack Obama addresses his party and says he isn't worried about them staying together. He says Democrats will win the presidential race in November. President Obama delivered remarks at the annual House Democratic Caucus Issues Conference in Baltimore, Maryland, Thursday evening and praised the work of his party as he enters his final year in office. He also said he isn't worried about Democrats winning this year's presidential race. Our trajectory is clear, the president said. Democrats will win in November and we will have a Democratic president succeeding me. The Iowa caucuses will be held Monday, February 1.
Just in case there's any confusion about that.
New and old parliament members gathered for the last union parliament session under the current government. Old and new members of Myanmar's parliament gathered Thursday for the last session of the union parliament under the current government. The National League for Democracy party of Aung San Suu Kyi is preparing to take office after winning about 80% of the elected seats in parliament in last year's general election. In a farewell address, President Thein Sein said he wished for the new government to bring peace and development to the country. He promised to finish the task of the transition following proper procedures. The NLD-led government will take power in March following a presidential election carried out in the national parliament in February. Suu Kyi is constitutionally barred from becoming president because her two sons are not Myanmar citizens. U.S. Senate committee approved President Barack Obama's nominee to be ambassador to Myanmar on Thursday after the administration assured panel members it would not quickly change sanctions policy as the country moves from decades of military rule. Republican Senator Cory Gardner said he had been concerned that the Obama administration would move too quickly to ease sanctions on Myanmar before it had made the transition to democratic government. But Gardner said during Thursday's Senate Foreign Relations Committee meeting he had been assured that the sanctions policy had not changed and that Congress would be fully consulted about any shift. The Obama administration has continued deep concerns about human rights and other issues in Myanmar, also known as Burma. U.S. officials have said they would watch for the democratic process to move forward before lifting more sanctions, which target more than 100 individuals and businesses and limit U.S. investment in the country. Shares of Valiant Pharmaceuticals International's fall after Hillary Clinton posted a blog detailing exorbitant price hikes for a migraine drug made by the company. Shares of Valiant Pharmaceuticals International Inc. fell on Thursday after the campaign of Democratic presidential contender Hillary Clinton posted a blog on Thursday from a recent Iowa event detailing exorbitant price hikes for a migraine drug made by the company. Clinton read from a letter saying that the list price for 10 vials of migraine drug DHE45 is more than $40,000. This is predatory pricing. It is unjustified. It is wrong, said she, according to the Post. The Clinton campaign tweeted a video showing the exchange. Officials at Valiant did not immediately respond to requests for comment. Shares of Valiant fell nearly 9% to close at $86.12 on the New York Stock Exchange. The United States has seen increased activity around a North Korean missile site, suggesting preparations for a possible space launch in the near future. Finding was revealed as Washington shows growing concern that Pyongyang could use space technology to enhance its missile capability, and while United Nations Security Council members discussed fresh sanctions against North Korea after it conducted its fourth nuclear test on Jan 6. The officials cited intelligence suggesting movement of components and propellant at North Korea's Sohae satellite launch facility. A test could take place within a couple of weeks, they said. Our concern, though, is it's the same technology to develop intercontinental ballistic missiles, one of the officials said. We are keeping a close eye on these activities by the North Koreans. We are watching 24/7, a second official said. Joe Bermudez, chief analytics officer at commercial intelligence firm All Source Analysis, said open-source imagery showed increased activity at the site in northwestern North Korea. A U.S. Treasury official's assessment that Russian President Vladimir Putin is corrupt best reflects the administration's view, White House spokesman Josh Earnest told reporters at a daily briefing on Thursday. Earlier this week, the BBC reported that Adam Subin, acting Treasury Secretary for Terrorism and Financial Crimes, said in an interview the United States considers Putin corrupt. The Kremlin later described the remarks as an official accusation. Bruce Aylward, the Assistant Director of the World Health Organization, says the UN agency has called for an emergency meeting party to ensure that national authorities do not impose inappropriate travel or trade restrictions in the face of the Zika virus outbreak. The World Health Organization has called an emergency meeting on Zika virus on Monday, partly to ensure that national authorities do not impose inappropriate travel or trade restrictions, a senior WHO official said on Thursday. WHO Chief Margaret Chan said earlier that the agency would convene the Emergency Committee on the International Response to the Zika virus outbreak that is suspected of a link to birth defects in Brazil. This is an important consideration of the Director General in calling the meeting is to ensure that there are no inappropriate measures taken by members. This is a major consideration of the Director General.
Wants to exhibit an abundance of caution with respect to the advice that you're giving to especially women who may potentially become pregnant or women who are pregnant. But at the same time, you want to ensure that you are not putting in place inappropriate measures or advice. And this is one of the key reasons that the Director General is calling the group together.
Over to Jamil Shadi for the first question.
Iranian President Hassan Rouhani is in Paris to drum up business for Iran now that sanctions have been lifted, but the visit comes amid continued diplomatic tensions with Paris after a recent missile test by Tehran. Iran's President Hassan Rouhani was welcomed on Thursday in Paris by French Foreign Minister Laurent Fabius on the second leg of his first trip abroad since Iran's sanctions-ending nuclear accord with world powers took effect. Rouhani and Fabius took part in a military ceremony at the Hotel des Invalides in the morning at the start of a packed day for the moderate Iranian president and his 120-member delegation of business leaders and cabinet members. Rouhani was due to deliver a speech to business leaders later on Thursday at a Franco-Iranian forum where Iranian ministers will outline their business plans. Several agreements were due to be announced after a meeting with President Francois Hollande. The leader of an armed occupation of federal land in Oregon urges remaining protesters to go home a day after his arrest and the death of a supporter. The leader of a month-long armed occupation of a federal wildlife refuge in Oregon on Wednesday urged remaining protesters to leave the site and go home a day after his arrest and the death of a supporter. Ammon Bundy, who was taken into custody with several members of his group at a traffic stop along Highway 395 north of the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge in southeast Oregon, urged federal authorities to let his comrades leave the compound without being prosecuted. First, I want to address my beloved friend Levoy Finicum. Levoy is one of the greatest men and greatest patriots I've ever seen. His love for this country ran deep through the blood he gave yesterday, and I mourn for him and I mourn for his family, Bundy said in a statement read by his attorney, Michael Arnold. Viewers, we are back in a moment with the headlines here. Frustrated, some Iraqi refugees quit Germany. Ethiopia facing drought worse than 1984 crisis, says charity. Japan prepares for Lunar New Year. Yemen blast kills 7-year presidential palace. New ISIL attacks killed more than 30 Iraqi forces. Dutch plan seeks to ferry refugees back to Turkey. Sweden, 80,000 could be expelled after refugee influx. Dead sperm whales taken for burial. Syria peace talks derailed as opposition stays away. Welcome back to Around the World News. Some Iraqis frustrated by the asylum process in Germany have given up, voluntarily returning to Iraq. It's not yet a flood, but a steam study of Iraqi asylum seekers in Germany are going home. Frustrated by the protracted asylum process and miserable conditions at shelters, they have decided they are better off returning to their war-torn country. Passenger Leith Khidr Abbas said, "When I return to Baghdad, I'll kneel down and kiss the earth." Long lines like these at the Office for Health and Social Affairs, where the migrants were required to register, contributed to the frustration. Almost 3,000 Iraqis applied for asylum in Germany last year. Germany says the number of them choosing to return began climbing in September. Now, Iraqi Airways offers 3 flights per week, including this one from Berlin. Many of the passengers are traveling on one-way travel documents issued after they either lost or destroyed their old passports. Livestock herds are decimated and thousands are displaced as Ethiopia bears the brunt of one of its worst droughts in decades, one that may eclipse the 1984 crisis that sparked the international appeals under the Live Aid banner.
neefkii dameeraha yar halka ku keenay ubadka oo u kala jeedinay halkaana nolosha way nagu qabatay dawladdu way nagu soo gaadhay
ana wayna siiyeen new booliska ciidamada u gaarka ah way noo keeneen waa dambas maxaa u nool dadka xoolo waxna soo maray doona anagu aragnay maaha way kay weligeed bayna la mid ahayn waa laba abaarood bay abaartii la mid weligii caalamka dad inta la eego kale to soo degay ma jiro abaar ka soo dhacda
Authorities prepare to deport tens of thousands with failed asylum claims after record 163,000 applications last year. Swedish authorities have asked police and the country's migration agency to prepare expulsions of up to 80,000 refugees and migrants who arrived in 2015 and whose applications for asylum could be rejected. We are talking about 60,000 people, but the number could climb up to 80,000. Interior Minister Anders Gemen told the Dagens Industry Daily on Thursday. More than 160,000 people sought asylum in Sweden last year. A longtime resident of Japan's Yokohama Chinatown looks back at the changes over the last decade as the historic town prepares for the Lunar New Year. Hundreds of red lanterns have gone up across Yokohama's historic Chinatown as residents get ready for the Lunar New Year. Chinese merchants originally settled in Yokohama in 1858. Since then, it's become one of the largest Chinatowns in the world, with more than 600 shops and 200 restaurants serving various cuisines. Locals say in the last decade they have noticed more Chinese immigrants coming from the mainland. Longtime residents like restaurant owner Chizhen Zheng said the biggest shift is the growth of Chinese-owned businesses in the area. More than 21 million visitors from all over Japan visit Yokohama Chinatown every year. ISIL affiliate claims responsibility for suicide car bombing in southern port city of Aden. At least 7 people have been killed after a car bomb went off outside the presidential palace in the southern Yemeni city of Aden. The local police chief says media told that 15 people were also wounded in Thursday's blast. The dead included soldiers, he said. An affiliate of the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant group claimed responsibility for the attack. More suicide bombers and snipers target Iraqi soldiers and militia allies still fighting to take full control of Ramadi. A new wave of ISIL suicide attacks, sniper fire and roadside bombs targeting Iraq forces and their militia allies killed more than 30 fighters on Thursday in and around the city of Ramadi, a military source told media. The heavy fighting comes after more than 50 Iraqi soldiers and pro-government tribal fighters were killed earlier in the week during attacks by the Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant group near the city, which lies just 100 kilometers west of Baghdad. Earlier in January, the Iraqi army declared Ramadi liberated after a major offensive reclaimed government officials in the city center. Refugees who arrive on Greek islands by boat would be returned to Turkey almost immediately under Labour Party proposal. A plan presented by the Dutch Labour Party is proposing to ferry back refugees from Greek islands to Turkey in an attempt to control the influx of refugees into Europe. The Netherlands, currently holding the European Union presidency, is gathering support for the plan among several EU member states, including Germany. The leader of the Labour Party, Diederik Samson, told Dutch media on Thursday, according to the plan, which is suggested to be implemented this spring, refugees who arrive in Greece would be returned to Turkey almost immediately by ferry. Authorities prepare to deport tens of thousands which failed asylum claims after a record 163,000 applications last year. Swedish authorities have asked police and the country's migration agency to prepare expulsions of up to 80,000 refugees and migrants who arrived in 2015 and whose applications for asylum could be rejected. We are talking about 60,000 people, but the number could climb to 80,000. Interior Minister Anders Gemen told the Danish Industry Daily on Thursday. More than 160,000 people sought asylum in Sweden last year. The carcasses of 3 of the 5 sperm whales that washed up on England's east coast are removed to be taken for burial at landfill sites. The carcasses of whales that washed up on England's east coast are being moved for burial. It took a team of 15 people to remove the 3 30-ton sperm whales. They will be taken to landfill sites. Their cause of death is unknown. Sperm whales can become confused and beach themselves in shallow waters. The Syrian opposition said it will not attend peace talks due to begin in Geneva on Friday, derailing the first attempt in 2 years to hold negotiations aimed at ending the 5-year-long war. An opposition council convening in Riyadh said its delegation would certainly not be in Geneva on Friday, saying it had not received convincing answers to its demands for goodwill steps, including an end to airstrikes and blockades. The failure to get talks off the ground on time reflects the challenges facing peacemaking as the conflict rages unabated on the ground. It has said it is ready to attend the negotiations, which UN envoy Staffan de Mistura plans to hold in an indirect format. We'll take prison break in Brazil caught on tape. Tale of 2 migrations. Bundy urges no more bloodshed. Europe's migration test. FBI video shows Oregon police shooting. Amazon shares plunge as record profit still misses estimates. U.S. economy likely hit a speed bump in 4th quarter. DNA blood test predicts suspect's age. Record hot years almost certainly caused by man-made warming. Welcome back to Around the World News. Prison break in Brazil caught on tape. Footage shows a dramatic prison break as inmates tumble out of a hole exploded in an external wall. Dramatic footage has emerged showing the moment in which at least 40 inmates broke free from a Brazilian jail following an explosion through an external wall on Saturday, January 23. The video, which was circulated by the Folha de Pernambuco newspaper, shows a man entering the compound shortly before an explosion, which sends inmates running and tumbling over the smoking wall before many turn back. 2 inmates are also depicted running away outside the compound. Gunfire was reported during the escape, killing 2 inmates, according to the newspaper, and leaving another hospitalized. Syrian migrants seek shelter in a Norway church as Iraqi refugees land in Prague, all while Europe debates migration controls. A church in Arctic Norway becomes a sanctuary for 3 Syrian migrants. They fear they will be sent back to Russia. Asylum seeker from Syria says, actually now we have a hope to stay here in Norway because we don't have any other choice. But their hopes may not be enough. Norway's government has tightened asylum rules in response to the influx of migrants and refugees. In a statement through his lawyers, Eman Bundy, the leader of the Oregon occupation, says he wants the remaining protesters to turn themselves in. Eman Bundy, the leader of the Oregon occupation, is urging his followers once again to turn themselves in. In a second statement read by his attorney, Bundy said he wants no more bloodshed. Police and federal agents sought on Thursday to convince a handful of remaining protesters to abandon their occupation of a U.S. wildlife refuge in Oregon. It was not certain how many holdouts were still hunkered down in a cluster of small buildings inside the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge as of Thursday morning. But in a video posted overnight on YouTube, activist David Fry says 8 more occupiers have left the compound since law enforcement surrounded it.
Prior to do so, we never wanted bloodshed. We verbalized this many times, and we continue to do so. He doesn't want us to have to come back and tell him that someone else has died. He wants no more bloodshed. He's very clear on that.
Europe faces harsh test and struggle to find common cause on migration as Sweden copes with migrant crisis as Germany's Merkel appeals for a balance. A rescue mission in the Mediterranean, part of a multi-day operation by the Italian Coast Guard that saved the lives of more than 1,200 people. It's a snapshot as Europe faces a harsh test in the struggle to find common cause on migration. In Sweden, police stand outside an asylum center where an employee was allegedly stabbed to death by a 15-year-old asylum seeker, sparking concerns that the country is becoming overwhelmed by asylum seekers. FBI says video shows stay Oregon occupier reach for jacket pocket. The FBI on Thursday released a video. Investigators say shows one of the occupiers of an Oregon wildlife refugee reach for his jacket pocket before he was shot dead by police after speeding away from a traffic stop where the group's leader was arrested. Authorities said 54-year-old Robert Levoy Finicum, a rancher from Arizona who acted as a spokesman for the occupiers at the Malheur National Wildlife Refuge, was armed when he was stopped by police and killed on Tuesday afternoon. Now the business news. Amazon.com Inc. posted its most profitable quarter ever on Thursday, but the world's #1 online retailer still managed to disappoint Wall Street by badly missing estimates, sending its shares down more than 13% in after-hours trading. The results, as well as the company's determination to invest more in new areas and its extremely low profit margins, brought back perennial questions for investors about the company's ability to consistently earn money. By comparative retail standards, Amazon's level of profitability is still painfully weak, said Neil Saunders, head of retail analyst firm Colomino, who is still positive on Amazon's prospects. For every dollar the company takes, it makes just 0.75 of a cent in profit. Amazon's net profit for the fourth quarter, which includes the holiday shopping season, rose to $482 million or $1 per share in the quarter ended December 31st. U.S. economic growth likely braked sharply in the fourth quarter as businesses doubled down on efforts to reduce an inventory glut and unseasonably mild weather cut into consumer spending on utilities and apparel. Gross domestic product probably rose at a 0.8% annual rate, according to a media survey of economists, also as a strong dollar and tepid global demand hurt exports and lower oil prices continued to undercut investment by energy firms. We'll take a short break here. Do stay with us.
ফ্রেন্ডস ডেভেলপমেন্ট
একটি স্বপ্নের ঠিকানা, একটি সুন্দর আবাসস্থল। ফ্রেন্ডস ডেভেলপমেন্ট আপনার স্বপ্নের বাস্তব রূপ দেয়।
নতুন ডুপ্লেক্স, অ্যাপার্টমেন্ট, কমার্শিয়াল বিল্ডিং নির্মাণের জন্য নির্ভরযোগ্য একটি প্রতিষ্ঠান
ফ্রেন্ডস ডেভেলপমেন্ট।
অত্যাধুনিক ডিজাইন, সর্বশেষ প্রযুক্তির সমন্বয়ে আমাদের কর্মতৎপরতা কনক্রিট, সিমেন্ট আর ইস্পাতের মজবুত বন্ধনে
গড়ে উঠুক আপনার বাড়ি। রোদ বৃষ্টি সহ সকল বৈরিতার বিরুদ্ধে করি সঠিক ট্রিটমেন্ট।
আপনার শহরের প্রাইম লোকেশনে রয়েছে আমাদের অ্যাপার্টমেন্ট।
আপনার কষ্টার্জিত টাকা এবং আমাদের নির্ভেজাল শ্রমে নির্মিত হোক আপনার স্বপ্নের বাড়িটি। আপনার জীবন হোক সুন্দর এবং আনন্দময়।
আমাদের ঠিকানা ফ্রেন্ডস ডেভেলপমেন্ট, 211 ইস্ট 43 স্ট্রিট, সুইট বি, 507, নিউ ইয়র্ক, NY 10017, ফোন 718-893020।
ইমেল friendsdevelopment@optimum.net। নিশা ট্রেডিং একটি আন্তর্জাতিক মানের গার্মেন্টস প্রোডাক্ট আমদানি ও রপ্তানিকারক প্রতিষ্ঠান। ইউরোপ, এশিয়া ও আমেরিকা সহ বিশ্বের নানা স্থানে বাইং, মার্চেন্টাইজিং এবং ম্যানুফ্যাকচারিং করে থাকে। সর্বাধুনিক প্রযুক্তিতে তৈরি বিভিন্ন ডিজাইনের পোশাক বাজারজাতকরণ এবং বিপণন এই প্রতিষ্ঠানের লক্ষ্য। প্রতিষ্ঠানের বৈশিষ্ট্য: উন্নত মান নিশ্চিতকরণ, টেকসই পণ্যের নিশ্চয়তা, নির্ধারিত সময়ে পণ্য সরবরাহ, লেনদেনের স্বচ্ছতা ও বিশ্বস্ততা। যোগাযোগের ঠিকানা USA কর্পোরেট অফিস, 1747 থার্ড স্ট্রিট সুইট 215, জ্যাকসন হাইট, নিউ ইয়র্ক, NY 11372। বাংলাদেশ কর্পোরেট অফিস, বাড়ি নং 145, সপ্তম তলা, রোড নম্বর 12, ব্লক জি, দক্ষিণ বনশ্রী, খিলগাঁও, ঢাকা 1219।
We are back in a moment with the headlines here. Mexican researchers feed dog with 3D printed prosthetic leg. 3D printing helps toddler receive adult kidney. Ariane rocket takes off in dramatic fashion. America remembers Challenger 30 years on. Governor extends Flint water emergency, state approves funds. Dior shows mirrors a new woman, modern and free. Warren Buffett, Schwarzenegger reunite on Celebrity Apprentice. Leonardo DiCaprio meets Pope to talk about environment. Hungry Panthers happy to deny Peyton a fairy tale finish. Court denies knowledge of 2017 World Championship bribes. Welcome back to Around the World News. Now the science, technology and environment news. A 6-year-old dog named Romina, who was injured in a lawnmower accident, is fitted with an articulated prosthetic leg made with 3D printing technology. Specialists at the Universidad del Valle de Mexico's veterinary hospital worked for 6 months designing the country's first articulated leg with joints that mimic the natural movement of the whippet's leg. Santiago Garcia, UVM's Great Species coordinator, said he is able to print out the model in 3D, made the process easier and enabled him to adjust it quickly. When we have the 3D model of the patient's limb, we are able to adjust the size of the piece to the patient in terms of millimeters, he explained. Surgeons used 3D printed models of 2-year-old Lucy Boucher's abdomen and her father's kidney to figure out how to successfully transplant an adult kidney into a child. Lucy Boucher suffered heart failure as a baby, leaving her kidneys starved of oxygen. After successful heart surgery, Lucy faced a lifetime on dialysis, but the 3-year-old no longer needs this twice-weekly treatment after receiving a donor kidney from Father Chris 2 months ago in a groundbreaking operation. Surgeons at Guy's and St. Thomas Hospital in London used 3D printed models to discover how best to perform the tricky procedure. Mr. Pankaj Chandak, specialist registrar in transplant surgery at Guy's and at Thomas Hospital, says, "So this is the abdominal print of Lucy's abdomen. Now she's a 10-kilogram child. She's 2 years old, so this was produced essentially from measurements from CT and MR scans." Michigan Governor Rick Snyder on Thursday extended a state of emergency in Flint until April 14 as the Michigan legislature gave final approval of $28 million to address the drinking water crisis. Snyder's move, approved by the state legislature, means the state emergency declaration will continue as long as the federal emergency declaration issued earlier this month by President Barack Obama. The state declaration was originally set to end at February 1st. Extending this emergency will help us continue these efforts while working on long-term solutions to help Flint recover, Snyder said, of providing access to bottled water, filters and testing kits. Ariane 5 rocket launches into space carrying Intelsat satellite. The Ariane space program launched its first rocket of 2016 on Wednesday night from his launch pad in French Guiana. The Ariane 5 rocket is carrying a payload that contains Intelsat's next-generation communication satellite, Intelsat 29E. The rocket will launch the satellite into orbit for Intelsat, who provide high-performance connectivity services for media and mobile broadband communications. Ariane Space is scheduled to launch 2 further Intelsat satellites in 2016.
Ariane 5 began her mission rising into the night sky off of French Guiana, a trail of fire against the night.
The U.S. is marking the 30th anniversary of the Challenger disaster, the post-launch explosion of the Challenger space shuttle, which killed all 7 people on board, including school teacher Krista McAuliffe. January 28, 2016 marks the 30th anniversary of the Challenger disaster when a booster rocket failed 73 seconds after liftoff, triggering an explosion of the space shuttle's fuel tank. The space shuttle Challenger launched from the Kennedy Space Center on a mission to deploy a satellite in space.
One minute, 15 seconds. Velocity 2,900 feet per second. Altitude 9 nautical miles. Downrange distance 7 nautical miles.
I know it's hard to understand, but sometimes painful things like this happen. It's all part of the process of exploration and discovery. It's all part of taking a chance and expanding man's horizons. The future doesn't belong to the faint-hearted. It belongs to the brave. The Challenger crew was pulling us into the future, and we'll continue to follow them.
For the benefit of the crew and those on the other
liftoff. Americans return to space as Discovery clears the...
A record-breaking string of hot years since 2000 is almost certainly a sign of man-made global warming, with varnishingly small chances that it was caused by random natural swings, a study showed on Monday. Last year was the hottest since record began in the 19th century, in a trend that almost all scientists blame on greenhouse gases from burning of fossil fuels, stoking heat waves, droughts, downpours, and rising sea levels. Recent observed runs of record temperatures are extremely unlikely to have occurred in the absence of human-causing global warming, a U.S.-led team of experts wrote in the journal Scientific Reports. Forensic scientists have devised a test that examines blood samples left at crime scenes to predict the age of crime suspects to within 4 years. The test could help police narrow down their search for preparations and perpetrators in cases where they do not have an exact DNA match for samples found at crime scenes. DNA left by suspects at a crime scene often won't result in a match, but new forensic tests on blood and death samples can predict a perpetrator's age to within 4 years and could help police narrow their hunt. Bram Beckert, lead researcher in DNA test University of Leuven, says the blood test, for example, has an accuracy of about 3.75 years over a whole age population. Michigan Governor Rick Snyder on Thursday extended a state of emergency in Flint until April 14 as the Michigan legislature gave final approval of $28 million. Snyder's move, approved by the state legislature, means the state emergency declaration will continue as long as the federal emergency declaration issued earlier this month by President Barack Obama. State declaration was originally set to end February 1. Extending this emergency will help us continue these efforts while working on long-term solutions to help Flint recover. Snyder said of providing access to bottled water, filters, and testing kits. Now the entertainment news. The first dual show since Raf Simons' departure mirrors the house's evolution towards a modern woman, looking for luxury but moving faster and dressing more freely. For its first show since designer Raf Simons announced his departure, Dior took its guests on Monday in a mirrored decor to unveil a cultural collection for modern women. Always in a rush but with pride and style, the Spring-Summer 2016 collection was put together by the brand's in-house team, Swiss designers Serge Reflex and Lucy Mailer, and was unveiled in a structure specially designed for the show. Billionaire investor Warren Buffett has signed on as an advisor on the 8th season of NBC's The Celebrity Apprentice, more than a decade after advertising new host Arnold Schwarzenegger during his successful 2003 run to become California's governor. Buffett will join Jessica Alba, Tyra Banks, Los Angeles Clippers owner and former Microsoft Corp chief Steve Ballmer, and Patrick Knapp Schwarzenegger, an entertainment lawyer and Arnold Schwarzenegger's nephew, to offer guidance to the 16 contenders in the reality competition. Among the celebrities competing to become Schwarzenegger's apprentice are Leila Ali, the boxing champion and wellness expert who is the daughter of Muhammad Ali, football stars Eric Dickerson and Ricky Williams, retired basketball star Lisa Leslie, singers Boy George and Motley Crue's Vince Neil. There have been 13 popes named Leo in the history of the Roman Catholic Church, but perhaps none of them was as famous as the Leo who entered the Vatican on Thursday, Hollywood star Leonardo DiCaprio. DiCaprio, who is known as Leo, was received by Pope Francis, the Vatican said, without giving details, but the one-line announcement was enough to send photographers and television crews scrambling to stake out the Vatican's gates to try to catch him coming out. Footage issued later from Vatican television showed that the audience was connected to their mutual concern about the environment and climate change. DiCaprio, speaking Italian, thanked the Pope for receiving him and then, switching to English, gave him a book of paintings by 16th century Dutch painter Hieronymus Bosch.
Understand what it all meant. But as it, through my child's eyes, it represented our planet, the utopia that we've been given, the overpopulation, excess. And then the third panel, we see a blackened sky that represents so much to me of what's going on in the environmental movement today. Yet in the back, you have Hieronymus Bosch painting planet Earth when many thought that the Earth was still flat. So it represents to me the promise of the future and enlightenment. And it's representational of your view here as well. I wanted to give you this book as a gift.
Thank you.
And a
Sua
check.
Santità, questo è un dono di fondazione.
Thank you.
Now the sports news. Carolina Panthers players sliced up the sentimental notion they might feel bad about ruining what could be a fairy tale ending to Peyton Manning's illustrious career when they played the Denver Broncos in Super Bowl 50. Manning, who temporarily lost his starting job during the season due to injuries that limited his throwing ability, is widely expected to call it a career after playing in the February 7th Super Bowl, less than 2 months shy of his 40th birthday. "We don't really care if this is last game," fullback Mike Tolbert told the Charlotte Observer. IAAF President Sebastian Coe has denied knowing of bribes being offered or received in the awarding of the 2017 World Athletics Championships, a spokesman for the crisis-hit governing body said on Thursday. Earlier this month, UK Athletics Chairman Ed Warner said he had been told by IAAF officials that representatives of the Qatar bid had been giving brown envelopes to members of the IAAF Council, which decided on the hosts. Warner appeared before a British parliamentary committee on Tuesday but declined to identify who had told him about the alleged bribes, saying it would be inappropriate to do so before sneaking to the IAAF's Ethics Commission. Before wrapping up, let's look at this week's top stories. Obama makes new push to expand retirement savings. Obama says, "We will have a Democratic president succeeding me." Last Myanmar parliament session under current government. Senate panel approves Myanmar nominee. Clinton targets valiant price hikes in campaign appearance. North Korea activity points to possible space launch, says U.S. officials. White House backs Treasury view that Russia's Putin is corrupt. WHO wants to prevent inappropriate trade or travel limits due to Zika. Sanctions talk looms over Paris welcome for Iran's Rouhani. Oregon occupation leader urges end to standoff. You're up to date with our top stories so far here on Millennium TV, and don't forget to log into www.millenniumtv.net. Thank you for staying with us. Allah Hafiz.